I'm gonna be honest, but when the first two John Wick movies were released in theaters, I never brought it into much consideration. Like, I know these are movies that are generally well liked, if not beloved by many, but I never put much thought into them. That is until I found out that there was going to be a third movie, and seeing the growing popularity that the series has garnered, I decided to finally give the first two a shot in preparation of the third, just to see what all the fuss was about. The story of a former assassin who had his newfound life taken away from him by not only losing his wife through cancer, but a dog that represented his last shred of hope in moving forward, as it was the final gift his wife sent to him before her last breath, only for it to be taken away during a break-in, leaving him with nothing else to live for, only to return to his old lifestyle, has really captured my attention. So after I finished watching the second movie, which I at first didn't think was as good as the original, but still thought it was a great continuation, especially with that cliffhanger, I was set to watch the third movie the next day. After leaving the theater, I could easily say that the third was my favorite, and I fully cemented myself as a new fan of the franchise, especially with that movie also ending on a cliffhanger. So you can easily imagine that I was excited about the upcoming fourth movie, and indeed I was, but of course, we all know what happened. Because of this, we had to wait a total of 4 years, while in the meantime, Keanu Reeves was working on another fourth installment to a film series that no one asked for, and was as unnecessarily as expected. Fast forward to 2023, and finally, Chapter 4 was released. So, how can I express my experience with Chapter 4? Well, I'm usually not the one to make an explosive reaction, but I'll let someone else fill in that gap for me.
I'm happy.
Now I will go out and say that my feelings, or I should say my initial reaction to the movie, has sort of dwindled in a sense, in a way that I cannot give you the expression that I had when I first walked out of it. But the best way I could describe it is that just go watch this movie. I think you will have a very, very, very good time. It is without a doubt the best of the franchise. This is one of those movies where I really could not find any dull moment anywhere. This is a movie that, as I mentioned before, when I give my brief review of the first one, is that I was just glued to my seat. To the point where I was hoping that I didn't need to use the bathroom because I was just so invested in what was going on that I was hooked all the way through. Now, the movie is surprisingly a lot longer than the previous three movies, and I know that to some it may drag a bit, and there was a point, I will admit, I did kind of wonder how long will it take, but that aside from that didn't matter. I was just hooked by it all the way through. I didn't care. In fact, if it was a lot longer, I would have just stayed in. I mean, there was just so much in this movie that, I mean, it's hard for me to describe without trying to gush over it. Again, like I said, the feelings have sort of dropped, but especially since I've sort of lost track of stuff to remember. But all I could tell you was that just my initial reactions, I was just blown away. I love this. I'll go right out and say the John Wick franchise is a franchise of movies that I consider to be flat out perfect in every sense of the word. Like, there was, like, in all these movies, not just the latest one, but in all these movies, there was never a moment where I felt bored. I was just hooked all the way through. Even though I said I didn't like the second one as much, it still didn't change my feelings on it. I just loved every moment of it. Each day, I was just hooked. I was just hooked. That is basically the best way I could describe it. It's really hard to gush about how much I really enjoyed this franchise, and of course the character of John Wick himself and the world he lives in. Which is funny because the John Wick movies don't have really that strong of a story, but the world building and the characterizations, like the character interactions in terms of, and of course the action set pieces is what really keeps the franchise moving forward. And in chapter 4 really does not disappoint. It's it's just, yeah, sorry, it's really really hard to describe how much I just love this movie. It's just that good in my eyes. Now I know that some will complain that the action scenes are repetitive. I mean, we are in 4 movies, and they do have the same type of action set piece sequences, in a sense. But what I love about them is that they always found new creative ways to make that to make it feel fresh, especially near the end. That last act, I mean, wow, like just wow. It's so spectacular. I just love, like I said, I just loved every single moment of it. It's so damn good. Yeah. I even like a lot of new characters that they introduce, particularly Donnie Yen's Kane. He is easily the highlight of the bunch. I mean, I really enjoyed his character. In fact, so much so that I would love to see a spinoff with him, because I just really like his character and what he's capable of, especially because of his sort of disability and such. There's also the Tracker slash Mr. Nobody character played by Shamir Anderson, if I'm pronouncing his name right. There was a part of me that kind of felt like he was sort of out of place, but at the same time, I didn't mind his character at all. I actually kind of like how he was able to sort of manipulate the high table in a sense, which I thought that was very classy. And what how speaking of the high table here, Bill Skarsgård, like everyone else, like he's great with the right amount of intimidation. I think it goes without saying with a lot of the actors in this movie, like no one gives a bad performance. That's another thing too. Like there is nobody in any of these movies that I thought were flat out horrible. Like they all do a great job. Koji, another new member of the cast, played by Hiroki Sadaya. Sorry if I mispronounce his name. Many people would remember him as Shingen from the Wolverine, and of course Scorpion in the more recent Mortal Kombat. Probably one of the best parts about that movie. Yeah, he wasn't in the movie all that much, but still like everyone else, I just really enjoyed his character and his presence. Yeah. Rina Soyayama, who the actress who plays his daughter Akira. From what I'm told, this was her first acting gig, and yeah, she was pretty spot on. Yeah, again, not in it as much. I would say mostly there for like the first half or first. But for her first acting gig, oh yeah, she is great. Yeah. There's also the returning cast like Ian McShane as Winston, and then there's also Lawrence Fishburne as the Bowery King, and then there's Lance Reddick, who sadly passed away as Charon. Sorry, I'm pretty bad at pronouncing certain names. It's sad that he passed, but for what it's worth, I think he laid a great mark on his role. And it's pretty sad to see him go, but I think he went out with a, but I think he left quite nicely. If Oh, and I also forgot to mention Scott Adkins. Now, I haven't watched a lot of movies with Scott Adkins, but I have looked up videos of him in fight scenes during YouTube, and I actually thought he was a pretty great martial artist. And so when I found out he was in this movie, I was like, oh wow, I'm actually quite interested just to see what type of role he plays. Now, for a while, I was wondering where was his character, what was he playing. At first, I actually thought he was the right hand man that we saw throughout the film. It turns out that he actually plays as Killer Harkonnen, who is like the head of the German table, and I had to look that one up. I had to look that one up, and I was shocked. I was like, really, that was Scott Atkins, and pretty much like with Colin Farrell as the Penguin and the Batman, he was very unrecognizable. And then so I was like saying to myself, yeah. So when I found out that was him, I was like, well, no wonder why even though he was in a fat suit, he was such a legit martial artist. It was pretty much like, say, the Kingpin or Bob from Tekken. And then, of course, you got Keanu Reeves himself as the titular John Wick. And now, many people criticize his performance in these movies, that he doesn't really put much effort into it. And in some cases, I can kind of see that, especially with all of a sudden his catchphrase becomes, yeah, which I find kind of funny, but yeah. But John Wick is the type of character who I kind of view as a man with a few words of sorts. So it doesn't really bother me all that much. And yeah, like how he was in all three movies before. He was great. Even for a man who is near his 60s, he still shows that he's very capable of doing all these stunts and such. Now, if there is a sort of criticism about the movies, and that is the fact that they kind of made John to be a bit too OP, which is short for overpowered. For those who don't know, yeah, there are moments where I felt like I'm like saying to myself, this man is not a human being. Like, seriously, like, minor spoiler, there was a scene where he jumps out of a window and landed, and I'm like, okay, that's a little bit much. Like this man is not a real human being. Like, seriously, like, come on. But yeah, aside from that, yeah, he I don't know. I just enjoyed him. John Wick has become one of my new favorite movie heroes. So yeah, it doesn't really bother me all that much. So yeah, there isn't really all that much else I can say about this movie. I just yeah, I was just immediately you know glued. Like, I was just immediately taken in by what was happening. It was just amazing. And then yeah, this is easily the best John Wick movie. It is my favorite movie of 2023 so far. Then again, the only other movie I saw was Creed 3, which was good, although I will admit that movie I did feel like things kind of move a little quickly in the middle during near the end in terms of, but that will be something for another time. Anyway, yeah, I love this movie. If you're a fan of the John Wick franchise, definitely go see it. If you love action movies, go see it. It's a damn good time. I love this.